Hi, my name is Liz Thompson, and this is a presentation that I made at ASEE National Conference in 2021. The title of the talk is Seeing the Invisible, the year this white woman spent learning at an HSI. And I'm going to start by telling a story, but I do want to be clear that I'm not trying to accuse anybody of any improprieties. I'm just trying to reveal what inequity looks like. Moises is respectful of authority. He listens and tries to disappear into the crowd. This has worked for him his entire academic career. He is smart and resourceful. He does his work quickly, which helps so much. Of course, the speed causes errors, but in general, he has achieved high marks. The lab today is in the computer room. The room has changed several times, and he had an old email that indicated the wrong room, which caused him to arrive late. He finally sits down, only 3 minutes late, but it was too late to get a desktop computer to do the SolidWorks lab. There are 33 students in the classroom that has only 24 computers. No problem. He is prepared. This too has helped him in his academic career, anticipating what might go wrong. He also loves to carry his MacBook Pro around with him, a kind of prized possession. When others were buying cars, he invested in this computer. He opens it, but the university secured wireless isn't working. Perhaps it's down. This is not unusual. He tries the open network, knowing it is slow, but at least it is something. This requires a logon and a text to his cell phone. The lab instructor has already started the demonstration of the first task. He's familiar with this feeling. The logistic difficulties are causing him to fall more and more behind. But can he finish the assignment? Will he know what to do when he gets to the tasks? He just does the thing in front of him, get on the Wi-Fi. However, the open network is not responding either. It's fine. He uses his hotspot. Finally, he gets on. Now his only worry is the amount of data that he is using through the hotspot on his phone. It's 15 minutes into the class. He gets on Canvas, then starts to download the software. It says it can take 15 minutes. Others around him are saying that they can now get on the secured wireless. He decides to abort the download, get off his hotspot, and start over with the secured campus Wi-Fi. It's now been 20 minutes since the 2.5-hour class began, and he is feeling increasingly behind. He starts the download, waiting. Finally, it's complete. He starts the installation, but it aborted. Looking around, he isn't sure why, as others seem to be making progress. He downloads it again. This is where his tenacity really pays off in the past. Just keep trying. Often the second or third time it works. 35 minutes into the class, the instructor comes by and tells him that SolidWorks does not work on a Mac. The instructor walks away as there is no solution to this problem. All the computers are taken. He closes the laptop, a little frustrated, sitting, looking at the others in the class who are working. Because respect for the instructor is paramount, he knows he must stay in the lab for another couple hours. He can't work on anything else, or it would be disrespectful. He knows by experience being disrespectful is worse than not getting the work done right now. Two more hours he will wait, nothing else to do. When the instructor starts to grade the lab, he notices a few students haven't turned in the assignment. Moises is one of the late students. He will lose 10% for each day his assignment is late. The instructor is annoyed with students who are not doing their work. They are lazy, he thinks. They do not understand the importance of following instructions, managing their time. This is inequity. I grew up in the 70s when I believed that women could do anything men could do. But I didn't really quite understand the cost to those of us who are not white male, and this is invisible to me. And I'm interested in understanding how the stories of people who are oppressed or who are marginalized show up in the system. So the first perspective I'm using when I'm talking today with you and also in the paper is that stories matter, that the way we talk to each other, the things that we experience are important to share. The second perspective I use is a system perspective. And basically what this means is that persistence problems that are occurring are actually a feature of the system and not a bug. The other perspective I use is that individual agency is often overimplied, which actually results in a deficit model for those from underrepresented groups. And I'm applying an asset-based model where I believe that actually individuals in the system have incredible abilities to overcome, and it's really a systems fault, not an individual fault. I spent a year at Cal State LA in 2019, 2020. My home university is Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And just for comparisons, I'm just going to show you this slide that shows the difference in the two. So the enrollment in the College of Engineering at Cal Poly is about twice that of Cal State LA College of Computer Science and Technology. Generally, Cal Poly is a predominantly white university, and Cal State LA is a Hispanic serving university. There's about 10% first-generation students in the College of Engineering at Cal Poly, and about 57% at Cal State LA Engineering. 51% white at Cal Poly, and 5% white at Cal State LA. The cost of attendance at Cal Poly is almost $10,000 a year, which includes both tuition and fees. And at Cal State LA, it's about 2/3 that, with both tuition and fees. And this is despite they're in the same California university system, California State University system. And the reason for the difference is that Cal Poly has a lot of student-based fees that are on top of the tuition. And this results in an unequal distribution of resources. For instance, one data point is that the student to tenure fact ratio is 45-1 at Cal Poly, and at Cal State LA it's 59-1. So there was 4 lessons I learned, actually probably even more than that, but 4 broad categories of lessons. The first is that there's inequitable distribution of resources, and we can see it in small things that I'll show you. The second is that engineering education is for white people, by white people, and it's hard for us to actually see that unless we are able to listen well to our students of color. The second is this aspect of respect. Cal State LA, one of the narratives by the faculty is that students are quite respectful, and I want to really kind of dive into that and what does that exactly mean. And also, learning is impossible until basic needs are secured. And this really showed up quite a bit in the pandemic, during the pandemic. So first, I'm going to look at inequitable distribution of resources. So this shows up in instructional spaces. This is a picture of my classroom. And the students are working in small groups on problems. And this is a picture of the chalkboard at the front of the room. There was 40 students in the class, and I had this very small chalkboard. It was chalk, it wasn't whiteboard, which actually isn't a problem to me. But often there wasn't even chalk in there, and I had to bring my own chalk to the classroom. And this would never have happened at Cal Poly. We have large whiteboards all across campus. The second is there are a lot of small things. For instance, clocks are all through the buildings, and they're all different times. This doesn't seem like a big deal. People just ignore it because the clocks are not correct. But the batteries are out and they haven't been changed for daylight savings time or standard time. And again, this doesn't happen at Cal Poly because there's techs that come through and make sure they're all correct, or facilities make sure they're correct. So it's just these little things show up that don't seem to matter, but in the long run they do. The second thing is that engineering education is by white people for white people. And this is a revelation from my own experience that as a white person, I teach industrial engineering. So much of the things I talk about are efficiency and making systems run well. One of the things I use to describe that is Disneyland, how Disneyland is so good at getting people in and out and having them have a good experience. Another thing that I might talk about with ergonomics is airplane seats, like what is it like to sit in an airplane seat and how are the ergonomics defined in that seat. I might also talk about just things about a pleasant atmosphere related to fireplaces or places where people feel comfortable. And I also use TED Talks to help students relate the topics that we're talking about in engineering to a broader social aspect. This is all white people stuff. Many people in this world have never been to Disneyland, have never flown on an airplane, do not have a fireplace, and are aware that TED Talks are made by white people for white people. But there are a lot of things that we know about the students at Cal State LA. For instance, many of them are responsible for younger siblings and managing that time management along with their schoolwork and potentially work. They're also quite tenacious. The story of Moises really expresses that tenacity, that keep trying and keep doing things over and over again. They also have a great understanding of culture and food and what it's like to be in a community. They have really good knowledge of public transportation in a way that I had no idea. Other thing is they understand generational relationships, like what it's like to hear things from an older person's point of view. There's a lot of ways in which we can relate engineering to the things that are relevant to all of our students. The next thing is this idea of respect. It's quite complex, and as somebody in my presentation actually pointed out, that it's different depending on my positionality as an instructor, that perhaps others in that position do not have the same kind of respect I do, but it is actually something to be explored. And the reason is that many faculty at Cal State LA really comment on the lovely respect that students give them in the classroom and in research spaces. And this really causes a difference in agency, that if they have to be respectful, like in the story about Moises, that he was not able to actually challenge what was going on in the lab because he needed to be respectful. And this is a comparable lack of advocacy. So you can't really advocate for yourself and say, hey, this isn't fair. What is going on here that I don't have a computer? And then there's this unaware of unwritten rules that we don't understand, that some people who have a high respect or a high power differential might not understand that you can ask for things, like you can ask to challenge grades, things like that. But it's complicated. When I think about respect, it's a lovely thing to respect other people. And I think we shouldn't say it's bad, because it's quite lovely. And as I try to move from an expert model in learning to learning together model, what does that mean for respect? In that I do have some knowledge, but it's hard to tell what that means related to respect. And then also I have my own history of being disregarded as a woman in engineering. So I often try to get respect, and I'm wondering how I'm playing into that. The last area is looking at that learning is impossible until basic needs are secured. And this was so prevalent to me during the pandemic, when we saw that students were unable to access food related to being actually even having enough to eat. They didn't have shelter. I had a student who was homeless during pandemic. Also the health aspects, like actually access to medical care, especially during the pandemic. And then we all are familiar with the idea of internet access, that when we shifted to remote learning, and all of these are necessary before learning can even begin. And I think more emphasis needs to be put on this sort of bottom line things. So those are kind of the 4 lessons, or the 4 areas. I don't want to say that that's everything, because there's much that I learned by being there. But one thing I want to do is I want to call us to be learners. And of course, when we go on sabbatical, we go to an R1 to further our technical research. But I would like to have you consider going to an HSI, or a tribal and college or university, or historically black college or university, or even a community college on your sabbatical, so that you become a learner. And then I just want you to consider, do you have other ideas for seeing what is invisible to you? Thanks so much for your attention. I so much appreciate being able to give this talk. Thank you.